Mike, it says we're live. Do you feel live?
Yeah, we're there. We're good.
Good. I think you have a pulse. Hey, the funny thing is, I wasn't planning on this. I thought you were off today.
Well, yeah. I mean, I had some plans today, but they fell through, and I would hate to disappoint the LinkedIn Live stands. So let's talk about everything cyberish that happened this week. Why don't we?
Oh, I don't think anything happened. Did anything happen? And I get to talk about some new things we're doing too. But you know, what the people are here for is to hear us talk about cyber stuff, and then we'll talk about us. But hey, but I did want to talk about, you know, the vulnerabilities that have been in the blast this week.
Mhm.
And I think importantly, we had just an awesome panel, webinar, digital event, you know, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
You know, it was really great. We had Brian Hurd from Aon, and we did a panel on what's going on in cyber insurance and why people's rates are going up so much. We had some of the best survey comments we've ever had. We had people asking a ton of questions.
Yeah, the chat was really good.
The chat was really, really good. I'll go grab a link to it and put it in the chat here, or obviously you can email me, jake@criticalinsight.com, and I'll kick it over to you. But if you have an hour, totally worth your time. You'll save money because you'll hear what Mike and Brian have to say about how to talk to your cyber insurer or your broker or whoever you use. And you threw in quite a thing in there. You said you saved somebody $400,000.
Well, it's not as simple as that, but let me give you the backstory here. So I'm doing virtual CISO work for a pretty big company.
Yeah.
And when I hit the ground over there, I worked with their existing team to improve governance and start handling quarterly compliance tasks as key performance indicators, set up the annual penetration test, do the annual policy review, prepare for a tabletop exercise, got them to agree to bring in SOC 2 auditors so that they could have, you know, some papers to show, and work with their insurers on their the re-upping this year. You know, everybody's got to renegotiate things. So long story short, we had this discussion with 20 or so of their underwriters, a big meeting, and their broker. And when we were interviewed, we had our ducks in a row and good answers to everything except 24/7 monitoring, which is, they're working on it. They got their quote, and their risk officer came back and said, because of the prep we had done and the interview results, the quote came in $400,000 under what they had forecast. So did I save them $400,000? I think that's a little bit of a stretch. But I think working with their team and doing the prep and making sure that we had good answers to everything that they were going to be looking for, I think that's what did it.
Wow. I mean, that's impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And they hired you as VCISO. I'm sure that came with a large emotional cost, but what's the dollar cost?
I think what they put into the engagement was about $20,000. And so
Wow.
to be clear, my job is to mentor the guy that's moving into their CISO position, and he's 100% capable and a good leader. He's military, so it's not like it's a heavy lift.
Yeah, and, you know, maybe he's more delicate than you.
Possibly.
I mean, that is one heck of an ROI.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Okay, enough about me. Shall we get on to the news of the week? Because
I guess that you should. And by the way, my son's here. He's coming to say hi live here. So I'm going to see what he wants. You go ahead and talk about the news of the week while I see what he wants.
Okay.
All right.
Yes, there are a lot of things that have gone vulnerable and that are being actively exploited. So first up, I'd say, is the gift that keeps on giving, Microsoft Exchange. If you have an Exchange server that's exposed to the internet, you apparently have about a 50% chance of being vulnerable to this proxy shell exploit chain that we talked about last week. when we discussed this last week, it was that there had been a researcher who had presented this work at Black Hat and DEF CON, and then mere moments later, honeypots started picking up attempts at exploits. So now it's on for real. And if you haven't applied the Microsoft patch, probably a good idea to drop what you're doing and treat that as an incident. So that one's bad.
That one is bad. And sorry, everybody, it's a parenting moment, just in case you thought this wasn't live.
Yeah,
it really was. Yeah, there you go. It is live.
We don't script those interactions.
We don't. All right. Yeah. Anything else, Mike?
Fortinet firewalls. This is a big one. The FortiWeb management interface has a CVSS score of this vulnerability, and there's no patch for this, meaning that this is a remote, unauthenticated attacker can run arbitrary commands. Okay, so that's bad. Patch-wise, well, I think it's important to mention this is version 6.3.11 and prior. Okay, so check your versions. Patch-wise, Fortinet is projecting by the end of the week, and they're very good about notification and customer communication when there's a security problem with their products. So pay attention to what Fortinet is saying, and they're going to help you get fixed.
Yeah. So, and what else? I saw a lot of vulnerabilities in the blast, and there were some about IoT, right?
Yep. There's a whole bunch. Yeah. So, we talked about the IoT products that have the proprietary TCP stack vulnerability, right? There's also SDK bugs, right? Software development kit discovered by FireEye that would allow someone to listen in on conversations, tune into your camera and watch video, things like that. So this is all about IoT. The bigger deal is that the QNX operating system, which is now, I think, owned by BlackBerry, is advertised as a high-performance, very secure operating system for a lot of things, including medical devices. So this warning comes out from the FDA because it's used in a lot of medical devices. And BlackBerry is having problems identifying everyone that's using devices with that OS. So patching this is going to be a bit of a mess. And then finally, there's the one, it's the bad random number generator. I can't remember if we talked about this last week or not. This one is subject to broad scale exploit due to weak keys, right? And remember that Chinese actors are known to launch attacks from compromised home routers and other commodity technologies. So there's that.
And I just got a new home router. So an attack against a national lab could come from my home IP address.
Yeah.
That wouldn't look good. You'd probably just blame the marketing department. What should somebody do about that?
Well, I think we should give you another round of background check for one. Well, upgrade, I think, is the only answer there, actually.
Yeah. Hey, besides vulnerabilities, a lot of stories this week that rise to the level of things we should talk about. T-Mobile, they lost 40 million records. Is that right? 30 million, 40 million records?
I read this morning it's 47 million.
And another ransomware attack against a hospital, actually a couple of hospitals, has forced patients to be directed. That was West Virginia and Ohio. Colonial Pipeline is now saying it was worse, and they lost employee records when they were hit with ransomware. Yep. That's not super surprising, though. I mean, once the bad people are in, bad people are in, right?
Yeah, I mean that's the admission everybody needs to make. When they push the button and the ransomware hits, they've been in there a long time. So now Colonial is dealing with this knock-on effect of data breach reporting. So since we're going nation state here, it is reported, and we all knew this, that ransomware gangs are working with Russian intelligence services. Duh. But that revelation coming out as authoritative reporting is going to add some kerosene to the fire in terms of ransomware is terrorism, right? So unsaid in the reporting I've seen is that if this connection has been made with evidence, someone gets the $10 million that the State Department has put up for exactly that. There's a reward out there. If you can prove that these ransomware actors are affiliated with the government, there's a bounty they're going to pay. So
I hadn't thought of that.
Maybe somebody's going for that. The bigger threat we face right now is the disinformation that's coming out of Russia. They are actively messing with the US by selling lies to the gullible. And look around, it's working. More than half of Americans get their news through social media, at least, most of the time, part of the time. It is the best tool ever for confirmation bias. People want to believe their tribe is right. And when someone reinforces that for them, it becomes gospel, despite how easily disprovable a lot of this stuff is. That is one huge reason so many people are anti-vax. They're being fed BS by Russian propagandists, and they want to believe they're right. So they pass it along to people that pass it along, and now we're screwed. And before I leave this, I want to point out that the state of Illinois is now the first to require media literacy classes in high school. Thank you, Illinois. Also, stay in school, kids.
Hey, so funny story that I don't think I've ever told you. When I was in high school, I was one of the people on a panel at the U.S. Capitol teaching people about media literacy and the importance of media literacy for teenagers.
Clearly, you should have done a better job.
Clearly, that was years ago, and it mattered back then. And that was, we were still using Pine for email.
Oh God. Do you know what Pine means? Do you know what Pine means? You know what Pine stands for?
I don't. What?
Pine is not elm. That is for real what it means. Elm.
Really?
Elm was a male tool before Pine. Pine was developed by University of Washington, and Pine is not elm.
I did not know that.
You got to go way back to know this stuff.
Well, when I think way back, I think of you. Hey, and by the way, we were talking about incidents before. One of the new things that we're doing is, a lot of our customers, they use us for 24/7 eyes on glass for managed detection response, and that means when something bad happens, we give them a call and say, hey, something bad is going on in your system. Some of our customers have said, hey, we want you to take action in our system and do something. Right. And so one of the things that we can now do is we develop playbooks with organizations of, hey, if this happens, these are the actions that should happen. And
here's what we'll do.
And here's what we'll do. Here's what we'll do. Here's what you'll do. And then we have incident responders working around the clock who will do those things.
And we can quarantine your assets for you till you can get in and clean them up.
Yeah. So anyway, I got to create a bunch of marketing sheets on that. But if anybody's interested in talking more about that, shoot me an email, jake@criticalinsight.com. Whether you want to buy it or not, I'd love to talk about it with people not in the organization, because I'd love your take on it. Now, we're almost out of time. Mike, leave us with a kicker.
Okay, before I do that, something has jogged my memory, and I want to go back to this insurance panel that we did yesterday, just real briefly, because one of the things jumped out at me when I watched the replay, and that was Brian was talking about the fact that insurance companies have done all this analysis to figure out what the root cause of all of the cybering has been. And what's coming out of this is the list of products that they say, if you have these, you're less likely, to get cybered. And rather than, the root cause being user error or something like that, it's starting to become all about the products. And I'm not sure that's the right way to look at this. Here's the list of the 3 firewalls. If you have one of these, we'll go ahead and insure you. I don't like the way this is going, and I'm not sure that the 100-pound brains that work on, actuarial tables for insurance companies are cyber enough. I don't know how to say that. Okay.
Well, I mean, the whole thing is very frustrating. And I just talked to somebody last night who's the CEO of another cyber insurance company.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking about, his insurance. He's about to go back and, renew, and he's wondering what's going to happen. And, we'll see. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody has either faced it or is facing it. And nobody really likes what the future looks like there. So I don't know.
No, but you don't want, so, we've said insurance companies are probably the ones that are going to be authoritative about setting the requirements that you really have to meet because they have the financial dog in the fight, right? But
Right.
what if this turns into something where they advocate the only acceptable products, they're just going to drive a bunch of companies out of business. And it's not the product, it's how it's used, it's how it's configured, it's the conditions under which it's operating, right? Anyway, we'll come back to this later, but this is just something that came out of that panel discussion that I think deserves a little more discussion.
Well, and we might do that. So hey, so that wasn't funny. Do you have something?
No, it's not funny. Well, it's not funny, but it's interesting. That hacker that stole $611 million in cryptocurrency, about half that has been returned. And the exchange is working with him or her to get the rest back. And the hacker is claiming this was all just for fun. You'll get your money back. Really? Wow. So meanwhile, the Poly Network crypto platform, okay, which is the one that was hit here, while negotiating with the perp on getting their money back, is offering the same perp a job as a security consultant, which I suspect is contingent on returning the rest of the money. I'm sure that, during the negotiation here that the perp is going to be just fine sending in a resume with contact info. Gotta admit.
That was funny. You said it wasn't funny. That's funny.
I don't know. It's ironic. It's interesting. I don't know if it's funny.
I am the arbiter of what's funny, Mike. And it's funny.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
I defer to your greater knowledge of humor.
Well, we'll see if that person gets a job or goes to prison. Those seem like the only two options.
Yeah, that's right. There is no middle ground here.
There's no middle ground. There's no middle ground. There's no middle ground. All right. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We really appreciate the time.
Yep.
Mike, I hope that you get to take some time off because you said that you would, but here you are anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And have a good day.
Okay. Bye, everybody.